All right, and it is 1 minute two. We are right on time. Thanks for reminding me to do that.
Thanks for the faces who are smiling. It's nice to see you.
Eliza,
It's a
this
nice
girl,
input.
she's always here.
Awesome.
And I
Oh,
tutored and I tutored 6, 7 kids today.
oh my gosh.
Where's our reward for you?
And
I
she's
eat
still
dinner in my
smiling.
yeah. I usually eat dinner in my bed to recharge for that 6 to 7 o'clock hour.
Oh man, you're the best. You are the best.
Oh, and Donna, can I tell you one thing?
Sure.
I'm in touch with the woman in charge of the the English in for that first grade for my district, and she just wrote me back today. I hope she's telling the truth. She said they're looking at the classroom libraries. They have a survey going out to the teachers about the word study pace. And she said she's been speaking informally with the teachers to find some stuff out. So I was kind of happy that, yeah, I'm not
Something's
giving up.
moving.
Right. I'm not giving up on that. I'm not. Okay. Sorry. I was
That's
excited.
okay. No problem. Thanks for sharing. That's awesome. All right, Marnie, it's all yours whenever you're ready.
Okay, well, thank you all for being here. How many of you were here last week for part one? Maybe you could give me a reaction or type in the chat, or thank you, Eliza. Yes, I see the hand from Darcy. Awesome. And Jennifer's real hand, not a digital hand, DM, and Lucrezia. It was great. That's good. Thank you. Lori caught up yesterday. Very impressive. Sandra, hopefully we can catch you up. I'm going to do it. Well, not entirely, but I'll do a little review. And G Johnson, there is a replay in the Facebook group. So, okay. So let's get started, shall we? I am trying to do the big content tonight in 45 minutes and then leave time for questions. So I got to really boogie woogie through this content. Okay. But ask questions in the chat. And if I don't get to it as we go, I can get to it later. And of course, if you know the answer, feel free to respond. So my topic is part two on how Reading Simplified spurs phonemic awareness and orthographic mapping. And Reading Simplified is a creation of mine, and I'll explain a little bit more about that if my cursor works. There we go. This is what I said last week is where we were headed. Mostly I did part 1 and 2 last week, defining phonemic awareness and orthographic mapping and their importance, and also a streamlined lens on these big ideas in reading. I'm still going to keep trying to develop that. Now we'll probably get more into how the 3-part Reading Simplified lesson spurs phonemic awareness, orthographic mapping, and just generalized reading achievement. Along the way, you'll see video examples of these activities. And then, like I said, we'll have Q&A. I talked about this last week. What are the roots of this program? It comes from my experience and tons of reading, research at the University of North Carolina, reading interventions that I got to develop one along the way and others that I've read about. And so you could go back to the other video to learn a little bit more. But in brief, Reading Simplified is a system that streamlines the process of learning the teaching of reading for beginning readers, struggling readers, and students with dyslexia. So it really works for anyone who's not yet fluent. It's also a streamlined method of delivery for the child. So we're trying to make it easier for teachers to learn, particularly in these days when so many folks are saying, I didn't know, what I should have learned in college. I didn't learn this. So hopefully Reading Simplified is one option for streamlining how we learn what we may have missed. But along the way, most students learn to read at an accelerated pace. And so that's also very exciting. And Jennifer says she's been using Reading Simplified system for 2 years, and it's amazing. And Jennifer, we see her outcomes, so she knows what she's talking about. This is where we're headed. To keep reading from overwhelming us, we often teach in a small group, one-on-one, or even in a whole group setting. We try to hit these 3 big components: rereading for fluency, word work, and guided oral reading. And the word work component has a lot of things that are similar to other programs, but then some important twists. And we don't really do much more than those few activities you see there. And that's one of the way we save the stress on the teacher. Usually we're choosing from 2 to 3 word work activities for a given lesson, depending on where kids are developmentally. We would probably choose build it or switch it. And we showed that last week, a little bit of those activities. We would then maybe choose read it or sort it. And then we might do write it. So that's the big picture, and I will get more into it as we go. But I also want to review briefly where some of the theoretical stuff, because I wanted to make sure we were on the same page with phonemic awareness and orthographic mapping, and then also that streamlined lens of those two big topics, which can sometimes overwhelm us and make us feel like we don't get it. I'm trying to make it clear so we do get it, and then we know what to do instructionally, whether we're a classroom teacher, an interventionist, tutor, or parent. So what in the chat, if you were here or you watched it on the replay, what's the #1 predictor of early reading acquisition achievement? If a first grader is going to learn to read, what is most likely going to predict it? Lori's popped in fast. What else do you guys want to say? Phonological awareness too, phonemic awarenesses. Alphabetic principle, I love that. Paula, yep. Okay, you guys, thank you for participating. Yes to all, Jennifer, I love it. Okay, yes, this is right. All of these things are essential early on, and the #1 predictor is phonemic awareness, specifically the phoneme at the phoneme level. When we predict based on something like rhyme, it doesn't get as strong outcomes, but when we predict on whether they can perceive that first sound in the word, which is something you can sometimes capture with a 4 or 5-year-old, it does predict who will become a reader. And we'll talk a little bit more about that if you don't know what I'm talking about. Why is phonemic awareness so important? This is really what I want to make sure people get. And this drives our reading instruction, and it drives the Reading Simplified system, and is why a lot of kids struggle, because a lot of the general public don't quite get this. A lot of us think that reading is a visual process, and while indeed most people read using their eyes, mostly the writing system is a code for sound. So the avenue for learning how to recognize words is through sounds. That's the key. To unlock the code is to process the sounds and words, or those phonemes. And so that's one of the reasons that phonemic awareness comes up as such a strong predictor, because to crack the code, you have to be able to process that information rapidly. So here is kind of that glue between those two columns to be able to match up R, the grapheme R, and the phoneme R. You have to use phonemic awareness. You have to be able to process that information. To match up EA as E, it's a phonemic awareness thing, along with getting how the code works. So this lining up of sounds and symbols, or graphemes and phonemes, is cracking the code. That's what good readers do quickly, and a lot of our kids can't do it quickly. In fact, this is kind of summarizing the phonemic awareness research. First, just to define it again, it's a term that we use to describe the processing of individual speech sounds, AKA phonemes, in words. And people have been doing a lot of research on this for 50 years. They've been doing a lot of research on it because it was found to be such a potent predictor. And so people are like, why and how and when? People have been studying it in multiple fields. And we just keep finding over and over again that phonemic awareness prepares the way for early, strong reading acquisition. Another big idea is it is the #1 predictor of early reading achievement. And probably most importantly, as a take home, many do not develop it without instruction. And that is why many of our students struggle. Even when we give them phonics information, if we don't really develop their ability to process the sounds and words, that glue is to have the graphemes stick to the phonemes, it's just not there. It's weak, and it's like building on a cracked foundation. So we need to develop phonemic awareness in all of our kids, and that will solve a lot of our reading problems. even though it's so important, and a lot of students are missing out on it because of what we should have learned in college, like Donna's original Facebook group name. It just wasn't something that was taught. It's not in a lot of reading programs. So it is super important, and yet it's not an ultimate goal in itself. It's just a means to the end of being able to quickly develop sound-based decoding skills. So we don't want to make it become more important than decoding. And one of the things that research has been pointing to is that phonemic awareness is best developed in the context of word reading and spelling, not in isolation, not orally only. A lot of programs do phonemic awareness orally only with the expectation that that has to come before reading, before we get into real words. But that's not what the trend is in reading research, and it's not what we are finding at Reading Simplified. Last week, we showed a sample of that. It's just a case study of one kid, but you could see how he learned how the code worked just because he put phonemic awareness, letter sound knowledge, and phonics all together in the context of words. Okay, Donna, I'm glad this is a good review. Let's move on to the other big topic, which is kind of probably more intimidating. Many folks knew about phonemic awareness last week, but not as many were as comfortable about orthographic mapping. I want to reduce some of the anxiety there. Even though it's a big fat word, it really just means the way we get words to stick. We learn how to decode, and then through practice, words start to stick. They become sight words. And I mean by sight words, a word that we recognize instantaneously. Dawn, did I misspeak? You said not in isolation, right? Not in isolation, but in the context of words, and not orally only. Did I get that right, Dawn? So let's go back to orthographic mapping. This is the definition, one of the definitions that Linnea Airy gives us in one of her seminal papers. She is the brainchild of this whole concept and did multiple studies on leading up to this theory, starting in the 80s, I think. She cited all over the place, and she said orthographic mapping occurs when, in the course of reading specific words, readers form connections between written units, either single graphemes or larger spelling patterns, and spoken units, either phonemes or syllables or morphemes, units of meaning. These connections are retained in memory. That's what we're talking about by sight. These connections are retained in memory along with meaning and enable readers to recognize the words by sight in an instant. In fact, it's so fast, it can be faster than even our awareness. Researchers can flash a word at us, we think we haven't seen anything, but then they give us a little quiz right after, and the fact that we saw that word is evidenced by the way we respond. So it's so fast, it's really amazing. An important consequence of orthographic mapping is that the spelling of words enter memory and influence vocabulary learning, the processing of phonological constituents in words, and phonological memory. That's just a fancy way of saying once we decode a word and we start to learn the inside parts of words like ing or li, and full words like said and together, that changes our brain and links the word, the way it's spelled, with sound and meaning. And I'm pointing over here because it's all on the left, mostly on the left side of the brain. And another important point by Airy, I just love this. She said, okay, so how does orthographic mapping develop instructionally? It's just these three things. So it sounds fancy, but it's really not much more than you might intuitively do if you've already kind of got the sense of how the code works. Number one, we got to teach the writing system, beginning with grapheme phoneme relations or sound symbol connections. You got to know that an SH is sh and that a G is g. That's grapheme phoneme relations, matching them up. You also have to teach phonemic segmentation, the ability to separate a word. So the word swim is to segment it as swim. And that is how you are able to match those phonemes up with the graphemes. So that's where the phonemic awareness comes in, at least initially. And then thirdly, you have to teach a decoding strategy for reading novel words. When you come to a word you don't know, you have to have an approach. So you have to know phonics, you have to have the beginning, the rudimentary ability and phonemic awareness, and you got to have an approach to attack an unknown word. Here's another way that she said it in the same article, and it's going to help us boil down to a formula to enable us to de-stress about how complex the teaching of reading is. Mostly what I'm focusing on tonight, by the way, is going to be on the word level, learning how to recognize words to develop fluency. So to that end, she says, decoding letters into blended sounds helps readers figure out words they have not read before, right? That's what decoding is. You blend the sounds and you deduce a word, and that's cracking the code. That's step one. Then she said step two, this is where orthographic mapping comes in. Rereading them a few times moves the words into memory so they can be read by sight. The first part's essential though, because the words have to be decoded in a sound symbol way, in a phoneme grapheme way, in a sound-based decoding system. That's what facilitates the ability for the word to stick or to be orthographically mapped. So just flashing words and emphasizing the way they look without connection to the sound, so that the child knows how to match up each sound with its grapheme, that doesn't work, especially after you get to the 3rd or 4th grade. Some kids can amaze us and learn 1,000 or 2,000, 3,000 words with visual cues, but very, very few people can learn, if any, can learn the 20,000 plus words that we need to be able to be good high school readers and beyond. And because that process happens through what she just talked about, not looking at the way it looks, but cracking the code and then reading it again. Sometimes it just happens as little as one time. So here's the formula that I'm hoping can help you de-stress about all the complexities with phonemic awareness and orthographic mapping. The phonemic awareness is essential here in the first step. To get sound-based decoding, it's a phoneme-based decoding. In reading, researchers often use the term phonological decoding because they want to make the point that code cracking is first and foremost about knowing how the sounds line up with the graphemes. Sound symbols, phonemes, graphemes. So that's the first part. Here with this model, I've got the meaning of cat with a picture. That's the upper part. And then the other part is hearing the phonemes or the sounds, k, a, t. And the other part, the orthographic or spelling part, the way it looks, is the CAT. So the child has to be able to match those up to crack the code, right? K, C, A, T, T. And of course, it's easy with a one sound, one letter, but it gets more complicated with words like though. But that's just th, o, two phonemes matched up with TH, th, and OUGH, O. That's sound-based decoding happening there. And that's why phonemic awareness is essential. So it's in that first part of our formula that it's essential. But then we need to read those words again after we've cracked them. Sometimes it's 1 to 4 words. Our students who have more profound learning difficulties and maybe even dyslexia are going to take a lot more than that. But most kids can orthographically map those words, or they can become sight words with practice if they went through this sound-based decoding route. And so that is how you get words to become automatic. When you have a large bank of words that are automatic, you most likely are fluent. Now, fluency involves a few other things, but this is usually the most important thing blocking kids if they're not fluent. So this is the pathway to learning to read words. If this is the pathway, then are we making sure that we're providing the fastest way to get sound-based decoding and then repetition of those words? That's kind of the formula that we're working here with at Reading Simplified. So we're taking that formula and just kind of getting started. You got to have, to get to decoding, the sound-based decoding, you got to have the alphabetic principle that a written language is a code for sounds. You got to have phonemic segmentation, and then you got to have a few letters. So that's what we showed last week. A little boy who didn't know the alphabetic principle, he couldn't phonemically segment, and he started to figure this out by putting everything together. This is what happened. And you saw just a snippet of day 1. He was hard working at an activity we call Build It. And in 3 days, we did about 8 minutes each day of Build It. And then on the 4th day, he was getting better at segmenting. You can see that on day 3, he could segment all sounds. So I thought, we'll up the ante. We'll go to our next activity, switch it. So I'm going to show you some samples of switch it. So this little guy then on day 4 was doing switch it, not just building a 3-sound word, but manipulating. We have mad, let's change it to dad, for instance, and then to did. And he got pretty good at it. So segmenting was the first step, and then he got to manipulating, and then he learned 13 letter sounds. And that was all with just that one activity, putting the ingredients that we talked about here, putting all the ingredients into the pot, stirring it up at once in the context of real words. That's how it was facilitated for him. And the reading research suggests that this is a possibility, and it gets faster results in general. This kind of direct to letter sounds and phonemes. Even we have some studies, it's not a massive amount of experimental studies, but a few, even with preschoolers and even some with special needs, are succeeding this way. So I'm going to kind of situate the next section that gets into more about Reading Simplified in terms of an instructional sequence. And I want to situate it with the simple view of reading. How many of you got this journal? The Reading League is a new organization. They came out with a new journal. They're trying to get the science of reading into the hands of teachers. And they had a whole issue on the simple view of reading. I'm not going to talk about it a lot, but it basically says that reading comprehension is the combination of the interaction of decoding or word recognition and language comprehension. Those things work together to build comprehension. You have to have both. So far, we've been mostly talking about that decoding or word recognition strand. Hey, Timothy, if you go to the Reading League, they will probably let you become a member, get the journal. It's a fairly good price, and maybe even order back issues. This is from just last year. Or is it this year? 2020? Last year, 2020, yeah. So that theory is helps explain big picture stuff. It's very well validated. And then another theory or another model rather helps elaborate on it. Many of you know about that, Scarborough's rope. She said in 2001, skilled readers are able to derive meaning from printed text accurately and efficiently. Research has shown that in doing so, they fluidly coordinate many component skills, each of which has been sharpened through instruction and experience, sorry about the typo, over many years. Figure 8 illustrates the major strands. Here we go. There's the major strands that are woven together during the course of becoming a skilled reader. These two processes operate and develop interactively rather than independently. And I hope you kind of saw that with the discussion earlier. We're putting all the pieces together. It's interactively, but we're mostly still just talking about the bottom. So that simple view had the decoding and word recognition as one box and language comprehension as another. Scarborough has elaborated on it. One thread is basically the same. One large thread is the same as the other, as the simple view. You can see word recognition and language comprehension. Those are the big threads moving together, but there's pieces of it. Both of these models are super helpful in thinking about all the things that could go wrong and all the things we need to teach. But it's not an instructional sequence. In other words, it doesn't tell you what to do with a 4-year-old on day 1. It doesn't tell you what to do with a 15-year-old who's struggling on day 1. And it doesn't tell you what to do 3 months in with either of those students, right? It's not an instructional sequence. It wasn't designed to do that. So I have put together an instructional sequence for this domain for word recognition. And we're going to get into that. So the reason that I think this instructional sequence I'm about to show you is so important is part of, I think, what makes Reading Simplified effective is that we're trying to give the teacher or the parent a diagnostic thinking process about where the child is in their development of word identification. It is a continuum moving up through various skills. Where are they and what activity do we match them with along the way? And only a handful of activities align with each step of this development. That's why we save some time, reduce the burden on the teacher. So I've created this development of sound-based decoding leading to automatic word recognition or sight words leading to fluency, but it's an instructional sequence. So not everybody would necessarily achieve this in this order if we teach them a different way. But Read Simplified does teach them this way. So I'm going to use this as a visual to connect it to particular activities, and then we'll show the activities. So that's the big thing. Look at the top, it's fluency. What are all the threads that build up to that? Let's break it down. Okay, the first thing that's so important, this is what we saw with our little guy last week who was doing Build It. He needed first and foremost the alphabetic principle. Our code is, our written language is a code for sounds. You have to have that aha and know how to start manipulating it. You also have to have phoneme segmentation, and you have to have basic code knowledge. And I use the term basic code knowledge based on Diane McGinnis's book. She just meant, and what we use, consonants, short vowels, and consonant digraphs. It's a nice little place to start the beginner. Many programs start that way so that the code is somewhat reliable, at least for a little while. And then you have to have, as Ari said before, you have to have a decoding strategy. And we use then to teach them how to blend phonemes, how to blend sounds together. And that is our decoding strategy we call blend as you read. I'll teach you that. About the same time, it's great if you can develop their phoneme manipulation, which we did in that switch it activity we showed last week. Then after that foundation is laid and sound-based decoding is functional, then words can become automatically recognized. That's where orthographic mapping comes in. And I like to push it up, up the strand, because I first want to establish that foundation, right? We know orthographic mapping, we know learning by sight works best when the code has been cracked. So let's prepare the kids to crack the code. And then as they crack the code, and as she said, reread, the words become automatic. Then they need to learn advanced code, like the long O. It can be the O in go, the O in snow, the O in grow, etc. So we're moving up developmentally because they've established some of these skills, these earlier skills. And then they needed the flex it decoding strategy. First, we teach them the blend as you read decoding strategy. And this is my term for what Gonzalez Frey and Ari call connected phonation. I just did a research article review on that on our Facebook page. If you're curious about it, there's not a lot of research on it, but they did a study and then it found that connecting the phonemes as you go, or successive blending, which we call blend as you read, is more effective than segmented reading to attack an unknown word. But then that's the first strategy. Then the second strategy is flex it. This just means if you try a sound and it doesn't work, try another. And that's what we teach through all of the guided reading we do. Point to the, the O-W in brown. If they say brown, you're right. What else could it be? So you develop their cognitive flexibility of playing around with sounds, and they need phoneme manipulation to be able to do that. And that helps them to develop more and more improved ability to attack unknown words. It's also related to, for those of you who are really nerdy, you might have heard about set for variability. This is the skill that helps develop that, but we're not going to get into that today. And then you get into multi-syllable words. So you use those same two decoding strategies we had from early on, and you do them at the multi-syllable level, but only, when some of the foundational things have been developed. So this is, again, a progression. We start at the alphabetic principle and we work our way up here. And then finally, another yellow strand is not just recognizing words or automatic recognition of words before, but automatic recognition of larger units. Becomes after the code has been cracked and kids are getting better at orthography or the spelling system. They see words like or parts of words like ing, and they learn it as a thing. It's become orthographically mapped as by sight, or ly, or pre, or even ick, or spur. That happens later. If we start with that, it can confuse the kid because they misunderstand how the phoneme is really the key to unlock the code. And put all those things together and you've got fluency. All right, makes it sound easy, but let's see how it fits into this lesson plan and our activities, and we'll show some videos. I don't have time for that. Okay, so Build It, we saw that last week. These are all the things that are being addressed with Build It. This is why you can save time by putting a lot of things into one thing. It's an activity, a single activity, but it does the concept of the word, phoneme segmentation. Most importantly, the concept of the alphabetic principle, teaches left to right tracking, at least in the word level. It teaches letter sound knowledge. It's actually literally in the activity that the kids can start to learn the letter sounds. And so it's a beginning decoding strategy. It's a beginning spelling strategy. And so you see that on our graphic. That's where we start that there. Prime the pump there. And last week's video showed an example of build it in action. But we don't do build it for very long because switch it is more powerful. It teaches the letter sounds more quickly, and it also develops phonemic manipulation. So it does a lot of the same things. You can see some of the same terms here, but then we're adding in the harder skill of phonemic manipulation. You have sat, change it to sit, and we change every sound in the word. And again, this is the place that letter sounds can be learned. You don't have to teach it first before you just plop it down on the board and give it a chance. Because it's a multiple choice question and you only add one or two to the board and the rest they know, or at least they have a pretty good inkling of what it is. So we drop build it when a child knows 5 to 7 letter sounds and they can somewhat segment CVC words. That's what's happened with that boy that I showed you on day 4 of that week of little mini experiment. He stopped doing build it and he did switch it because it was more challenging, kept him on his toes, and also developed phonemic processing, which remember is the key to unlocking how the code works. Jennifer's got her kindergartners already doing switch it. She had him doing it day 3. Now, switch it is important for learning the letter sounds, especially for the littles, but it's not just, its benefits don't just end there. We keep progressing phonemically to harder and harder levels. And so we really push their phonemic awareness, leading to advanced phonemic awareness, what David Kilpatrick has been calling phonemic proficiency. It's that automaticity with processing sounds and words. Can they segment really fast? Can they blend really fast? Can they manipulate really fast? And so you got to be able to do it not just at the CVC level, but we keep pushing them up every day or week. We see if they're capable of going to the next level phonemically. So 3 sounds is not as hard as 4 sounds. We push to 4 sounds, CC, CV, CC, and then the harder CC, VC, where the consonant clusters at the beginning, or CCV, CC. I mean by this consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant. And then the really tricky 6 sound words, CCCV, CC, like strand. And then if they can manipulate words there, then we go into nonsense words, because then we keep pushing their phonemic manipulation. And I agree with David Kilpatrick that it seems to really facilitate decoding. Okay, so before we get to read it, I want to show you switch it in action. Are there any questions so far while I set this up? I've shown this video a lot, but if you're new to Reading Simplified, you haven't seen it. It's a video of a kindergartner who did not know his, he only knew 7 letter sounds and none of them were vowels. He could not segment a 3-sound word. His mom was dyslexic and he had been identified in November of kindergarten as already being concerning to his classroom teacher. So I did 5 days in a row of switch it, not because I would think that you need to just do one activity, but just as a little demonstration project. And you can see how far he goes with this activity. I want you to see back to the earlier slide, all the things that he's learning because of this activity, putting all the pieces together with graphemes and phonemes or sound-based decoding, it starts to make sense to the kids. Donna is a nerd. That's great. We want our leader to be a reading nerd. Okay, so here is switch it, just little snippets from 5 days in a row. Practiced. What reading skills you see practiced? And I got to share the sound. Okay, here we go. The first word that I'm going to ask you to build is the word Sam, like a guy's name. What do you hear right here when I say Sam? That's right, that's the letter name, but what sound comes out of my mouth? That's right, which one of these is S? You got it. Okay, pull it down and say S. And again, because of Facebook's, this looks backwards to you guys, but it's left to right as it should be for him. Now let's focus on what's the next sound that you hear in Sam.
M.
You're so right. There is a that's coming over here, but I'm looking for this sound. I want you to listen really.
O.
I don't want you to think about what letter it is. First of all, I just want you to pay attention to my voice and your voice. What do you hear right here when I say Sam? What was coming out of my mouth right there?
B.
Sam.
N.
Sam. What comes out right there? Sam.
N.
Well, there is a you know what? Which one of these is an That's ah. This is an Let's put that one down there. So you got the but what sound do we hear right here when I say Sam? You got it. You heard it. That's ah. So you have map, and we need mat. Oh, I like how you stay there, ah. Okay, so you got rid of the puff in map, but we're using mat. Oh, you're hearing it. Very nice. Which one is Very good. You know what to do next? And the word is?
Mat.
Wow. You got soft. We need to switch it to sift. You have soft. Switch it to sift. Get rid of the ah. That's right. What sound goes here to make which is it? It. Just say it. Sift. If you sift something, you separate it. Okay, let's check the sounds in sift. You have plot.
No.
Yep. Okay, plod.
D. Where's D? Is there any D on here?
Yes.
There we go.
And what sound is it at the end of plod?
D.
Check the sounds, and you got maybe one more.
D.
No, we're doing the word plod.
Oh.
Plod.
D.
Duh. That's a good fit. Now let's check the sounds in stump. And the word is?
Stump.
Can you take away two things? Two things we're going to do to change stump to stun. Stun. Oh, that is so good. He got both of them. I didn't know if that was possible. We need to make stun. What's which one is That's O. You nailed it. Okay, I'm stunned that you did it. Okay, check the sounds in stun. It's hard thinking about that, isn't it? Stun. And the last sound? Stun. Very nice. Okay, so can you see the letter sound explosion with that activity? That chart was showing, can you hear me? That chart was showing all those letter sounds. He started with 7, again, no short vowels. Across the 5 days, he added all 5 vowels. Of course, that last day, the was still tentative. That was the first day I introduced it. But he learned 17 letter sounds. He could not segment 3 sounds at the beginning of the week. By the end of the week, he was segmenting 5 sound words and manipulating. That's what's possible when you put it all together and you really challenge our phonemic manipulation, because that's like, oh, this is how the code works. And it makes more sense because it's in the context of real words. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do it. I love Emily's got a Jamboard template for reading simplified, and Jennifer uses a magnetic board. You choose letter sounds, Lori, based on frequency. So usually you begin with the most frequent letter sounds that are needed the most. And Kathy, I wouldn't do, okay, Kathy, I'll talk about that later. Fun hub on the Wilson website, cool. Okay, so I am going too much into theory, so let's boogie woogie into the next activity. Somebody asked me about what are the components in Switch It, what is taught. And so here you have the model. Let me make this bigger. So these are things that are being addressed directly with Switch It, okay? The basic code, alphabetic principle, phoneme segmentation, blending happens with Read It actually, but manipulating happens with Switch It. And the blend as you read decoding strategy, that also happens with Read It. So let me show you that. Actually, it's over here. Okay. Again, a lot of the same things are being reinforced. With Read It, you give a child a word, usually it's starting with a basic code word. You ask them to read it. You help them learn the blend as you read strategy, which is put the first two sounds together, sat. And then they read the word, and then they write and say the word. Okay. And what's really happening here is it's the beginning of decoding, it's the beginning of spelling, and both these things, when we do reading and writing with a sound-based approach, we are going to provide opportunities for orthographic mapping. This is the beginning, but it's not a lot of practice. You also need to read the words in text, which we do. Now, so far we've been talking about mostly short vowels, but we want to move quickly into advanced phonics like long vowels and other things like the spellings for So that's where we throw in the activity Sort It. So the Sort It actually does almost everything that Read It does, but it does also throws in advanced code knowledge. You're still teaching the blend as you read strategy. And so you can see on the model, again, orthographic mapping happens when sound-based decoding and spelling is practiced. So you can see on the model, that's where Sort It comes in. So we have Read It, it's added in with the blend as you read decoding strategy, but we also need to keep practicing more complicated vowels. So that's advanced phonics. We do that with Sort It. Okay, so I'm going to show you some videos of Read It and Sort It. We'll figure this out in a second. Just give me a second. Okay, this is a super fast example. You gotta, if you haven't been paying attention, stop what you're doing and watch, because this example will go by in less than 45 seconds, I think. All right, here we go. We're going to share this. This is an example of Read It with a kindergartner who had some speech difficulties. And of course that meant, not of course, but often it means that there's phonological difficulties. So he's doing well to do the blend as you read strategy. This is the activity Read It. Notice this, the reading and the spelling, or the decoding and the encoding, are both part of the activity. Okay, let's put these sounds together. Okay, what are the first two sounds? Put them together. Put all three together. Nice. Okay, great job. You put the sounds together. Now say each sound. Beauty. Okay, let's erase and say the sound.
Can I redo this one?
Sure. I'm going to fix your ah. Yeah, nice, much sharper. Okay, now erase and say the sounds. So as he erases and the teacher erases, we say s, o, a, p. So what is happening for that child? Is he going to learn to blend? Is he going to learn to segment again? Is he going to learn the letter sounds? Is he going to learn a decoding strategy? Yeah, that's all into that, boiled into that one activity. But it's still just at the short vowel level. This is how we prepare kids for attacking the code. But then we need to get into the complexity of our tricky written language. And so that's where SoR-It comes in. With SoR-It, we teach one sound mostly for a whole week, but multiple spellings. So we don't just drip out O on Monday and OA on Tuesday and OE on Wednesday. We give it to them all at once. So we say, this is how the code works. You're going to have one sound and multiple spellings, and that helps them build a file system of how the code works. So here is an example of a first grader learning SoR-It for the first time. Again, notice what reading sub-skills are being practiced. In addition to the phonics knowledge, there's more than just the phonics with this activity. I have a secret sentence to tell you to help you remember the O spellings. Go home to show the boat to Joe. Okay, here we go. What is he doing?
Sailing?
Yeah. He's going on, he's looking for Joe's house. What's he gonna do? He's gonna go home to
show the boat to Joe.
So we take that key sentence that helps you remember all of these spellings and put it up here. Go home to show the boat to Joe. Then we have all of these spellings. You see them? Mm-hmm. And what are all of those spellings, what do all of those spellings have in common?
A-O.
They're all what sound?
O.
Oh, okay. So what you get to do is read a word and then decide where it goes.
Okay, let's go, go, go.
Just read it first. What is it?
Go.
Go. Where does it go?
Then.
Okay, so in this white space, write go and say the sounds as you do.
G.
No?
Wait. Good.
That's it.
O.
Good, good. Okay. Let's try this one.
O. Show.
Mm-hmm. You will show me where it goes. Just focus on show. Which one of these spellings? There you go. Okay, say the sounds as you do it.
O.
Nice. This one? It's all the
Oh,
O. Good. Good. I like how you figured that out. Oh, close. But you have to read the end. Row.
Road.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, I totally thought it was like row your boat.
But this is not row. It is
road.
uh-huh.
Road.
Okay. I can't type and talk at the same time. Surprise, surprise. Okay, any questions about SoR-It? I know I just threw a lot at you guys. Trying to orient it in terms of this big idea of phonemic awareness and orthographic mapping, and then show you just how a handful of activities work. So I'm maybe kind of running out of time to show you all the activities, but I will
Marnie?
just, yeah.
Question. For the read it, is that just for closed syllables? Because so you know the vowel?
Right, you choose regular short vowel words, either CVC, but then you push up to CVCC, CCVC. So yeah,
Right.
you keep it predictable, so there's not going to be the uncertainty about how to spell it. But that's where SoR-It comes in, and also the Flex-It strategy to cope with the variability of our tricky language. Okay, so I am going to wrap up with a couple more points about the whole model. As soon as I can find how, here we go, full screen. Okay, so there you saw SoR-It. And then another activity that we do that's really valuable is write it. This is a dictation activity. you can dictate a word, a phrase, a sentence. We try to tie it with the phonics knowledge that they're learning. If it's short vowel A, we would give them words with short vowels. If it's long O, we would give them words with a long O, maybe a whole sentence, like our key sentence, go home to show the boat to Joe, or from the book that they were reading, I love to go in the snow. And the point here is to, again, tie sounds and symbols together. We're always doing that with all these activities. They write the word map, and if they misspell it, that's fine. It's a process type activity. So we would say, oh, you know what? You got all the sounds, but this is not the right spelling for in map. This makes it mop. So we need to erase that one. What should that be? Do you remember? Or if not, I'll tell you it's So this also is going to be supporting orthographic mapping. It's sound-based decoding through either reading, in this case it's spelling, but this also feeds back into decoding. It helps kids pay attention to things that they weren't maybe noticing. And finally, Flexit is another strategy. Mostly we teach it while we're coaching kids in a book. Usually we'd start out with mostly decodable text, and when they come to a word they don't know and they read it incorrectly, we point with a pencil ideally to the phonics information that they made an error on. We say, try this again, or we say, what else could this be? And if those cues don't work, then we say, well, try owl, and then they read the word. So we're getting them to do the hard work of trying a sound, and if it doesn't work, trying another. So we call that strategy Flexit. You can also play an activity like this to sort words based on whether they're the O in snow or the ow in cow. And that's building, all these things are reinforced stuff that was started from the beginning, like phoneme blending, alphabetic principle, but mainly Flexit is teaching the decoding strategy of Flexit, which is essential beyond blending. And so that's where we put that there in the model. It can actually come up a lot earlier, but we want to be more deliberate about it, particularly after advanced code knowledge has happened, because that's when they get into all the variability. So I've talked a lot about the word work. The other key thing that I'll just end with is that we really challenge kids with a guided oral reading. We want them to make mistakes so we can coach them through it, like I mentioned with either the blend as you read strategy or the Flexit strategy. And so they develop independence. This is what Scher's self-teaching theory would kind of points us to. And so we give them a hard text for guided oral reading, but then we model reading it again at just the very end of the lesson, maybe once or twice. And then we ask them to reread it again themselves with a partner or with a teaching assistant, a parent, with some sort of digital device. So until they develop fluency on that. And so they come back maybe the next day. Oh, where did I get it? Shoot, did I lose it? I want to have a cycle from guided reading to rereading for fluency. There's a real tight connection there. And so as Ari said before, let's decode, let's learn how to decode, and then we practice it. So that's how orthographic mapping happens. They have good sound-based decoding skills, and then they practice it. And we do a lot of repetition through rereading for fluency. That's going to be more likely to build that skill really quickly. And so some of the things that we've baked in build for faster decoding skill and build faster orthographic mapping. One of the things that I want to challenge us to think about is, have you heard that the top 300 words are about 65% of written text? So those are big deals. And in phonics programs, sometimes we kind of shy away from those because we really want to emphasize decoding, which is good. But if our kids learn these words, they're going to feel like they're good readers, and they're going to be on the right way to being independent. But look at what's in these 300 words. There's a ton of words that have the E sound, but there's actually no word that has the letter Z. There's no word that in the top 300 that has QU, and only just one word with the J, the J. So we really need to hop over to advanced phonics knowledge much more quickly than we do. We want them to be able to get into something like frog and toad and feel a sense of mastery. All these yellow words are from the top 300. Notice the other words are, other than a couple of multi-syllable words like unhappy, mailbox, empty, most of them are 3-sound words. So we could skip for a season how to read 4-sound words, how to read 5-sound words, how to read 6-sound words, and go quickly into advanced phonics like the long vowels and get them prepared to be able to read these top 300 words so that they're reading real books much more quickly than they might otherwise. So it's not that reading the word slump and sprain, it's not that we don't need that information, but we don't actually need it early on as much. If you look at a lot of beginning transitional texts, they don't have a lot of consonant clusters. There's only one 5-sound word, plant, in the top 300. There's just 32 words with a beginning or ending cluster, but there are all these with the sound, the E sound, the A sound. So we could get that information into our kids more rapidly with Sorted. So that is, in lightning speed, how reading simplified spurs phonemic awareness and orthographic mapping. So I would love to answer questions now. For some reason, I lost your faces. You know, Zoom windows fly around on Zoom, right? But I assume you're still there, and so am I. Okay. I did not have the top 300 words, all of them there, Donna, but I could show you the ones that were highlighted. Okay.
What list did you use for top 300?
Fry.
Oh, Fry. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Let me say what. Karen says if they're blending words one phoneme at a time, how do they know if it's short or long vowel sound? Yeah, that's a great question. You're preparing them to notice the patterns in the written language system by really drawing their attention to the phonemes and matching those up. They start to develop this subconscious pattern recognition. This is what Seidenberg has pointed out, like the connections that people make subconsciously. And there's a whole field also of research about statistical learning, that in language and in reading, we absorb patterns. So I believe Seidenberg and his colleagues have put in like a formula to model how reading develops, and they've put in into the model, give the computer a list of rules, or give it some generalization, give it some observations about graphemes and phonemes, and see how fast it puts together the knowledge of how to attack unknown words. And the rules actually slow it down. So that's where the Flexit comes in, because you're thinking, oh, well, they can't make a decision. Well, they actually can, because they try the wrong sound. Say they read the word snow as snow. They're connecting all the time with meaning, if we've been developing that in them, back to that original model of the cat and the sounds and the spellings. And so they're like, that's not a word, snow. What else could it be? Oh, snow. And that's why switch it is so important. And that's why that prompt that we give, what else could this be, is so important. And that's where the set for variability research is kind of trending. It's very new, but it's saying that the good readers develop this ability to play around in sounds and attack an unknown word that they don't know. Okay. Let's see if I can get to some of the biggest and most important questions. I know there's a lot of little questions. I mean, every question is important. Let me not rephrase that, but just like if there's a question that's kind of something big that I left out. And Donna, if you have something off, that's you'd like me to read, let me know. Receptive and expressive literacy. Bridget, I'm not sure where you were referring, so maybe give me a little more example. Okay, Bridget's asking about how are they going to generalize. Okay, yeah, because we flew through this. So they're learning sorted, and they read those words in that box. And then that's not all they do that week. They would also read multiple texts that have that sound targeted. They would read a text like Joe and Joan, where there's the O in Joan, the O in Joe, the O in both, goat, go, and most, float. They would read another story that we have, or any other decodable books where the focus is on one sound at one time. A snow day with mom, and they read words like cocoa and snow and slow. And so there's a repetition that they get through the guided reading. And I just breezed through that, but that's an important part of orthographic mapping for sure. Prepare them with the word work and then practice it in the context of text. So it's through repetition of sorted activities, repetition of guided reading, texts that are targeting the one sound. Usually it takes about a week of targeting like 5 passages of the O sound. You can do some other activities like write it, search for the sound. You read the text. Many of you have probably done Starfall and read Robot and Mr. Mole or Soap Boat. So they read it, you ask them a summary question, and then they go back and circle or underline, maybe on Zoom, put a stamp on all the O spellings. So it's drawing their attention to learning that phonics information, and also by rereading, the orthographic mapping happens. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you asked that question. Donna said she loved the extended rope of the decoding domain. Great. It's new.
No, that's really a great teaching tool.
Cool.
I really like it.
Some folks are really helping out here, so it seems like a lot of questions are getting answered. Thank you, thank you. Oh, there's a lot more questions. Let me scroll down. Okay, Deanna is asking about independent activities. So we prepare them to go reread it by modeling it ourselves, or giving them an audio version, or pairing them with a student that's just heard it. So they would read, say, a passage about, like Soap Boat. If you happen to have seen that, they'd read Soap Boat with you, work hard through the decoding, get better at it, start to learn the O sound. You model reading it backwards, reading it again, and maybe once, maybe twice. Then you send them off with a partner, and hopefully they can do it, or maybe with the support of the computer. So all this could be independent, with a partner, with a parent, with a teaching assistant, or on the computer independently. Also, any kind of game where they're going to manipulate or write and sort those words can work. We play a lot of games with like word, cards, where they're getting focused practice on that for the week, like the O sound, and a lot of high frequency words. So on our website, you can find a game called Steal It. So you can see an example of that and actually take an example of, I think it's the O sound. If you go to Reading Simplified, you can search Steal It and find that. Kids love that game because it tricks them into reading more words than they normally want to. So Joan, we actually don't teach the syllable types because the Flex It decoding strategy preempts the need for it. We want them always working towards thinking about what meaningful word, and not applying an algorithm about which type of word it is. So I know that's radical because it's not Orton Gillingham, but there are a number of reading programs that are like Reading Simplified that go that route. And some of the reading research recently is pointing us that way. Devin Kearns just did an article in Reading Research Quarterly, I think, finding that one of the most influential syllable types is only true like slightly over 60%, which makes it fairly unreliable. So you've probably done something like this, even if you're teaching the syllable types. Then your kid reads a word, they apply the syllable type and it doesn't fit. Then what do? You say, do you give them the word, or you ask them to still try to figure it out? Well, you probably could say something like, well, what else could this be? And so we just start that much earlier. Rita says you've been working with dyslexic students for more than a year and never talked about syllable types. Her kids have gone from non-readers to at grade level in short order. Great example, Rita, thank you. G. Johnson, paired contrasts are great, and I'd love to do that, particularly in Switch It. You could also do it with a sorted variation. Darcy, the cost is to join the Reading Simplified Academy and to learn all about it. You can find that on our website if you go to readingsimplified.com, and one of the buttons is Academy. And yes, Marissa, our program does include decodable text. We also recommend others to flesh it out.
Just wanted to add that I just started tutoring a 61-year-old dyslexic gentleman who is probably reading maybe at a second grade level at best, and that's not fluently. So we've been doing these techniques with him. I mean, I first had to get him to know his sounds with some fluency because he had no sound symbol association. It was very hard. He had to use a word, like he had to use a beginning word to get that sound out, to remember the sound. So anyway, it's been my third session with him, and he's really starting to get this. And we're doing a lot of practice, of course, with phonemic awareness activities. But he's getting it, and he is so excited. He decided he was going to buy a computer this weekend and get internet. He's 61 and has never had a computer, so I'm pretty excited. So we'll see what happens. Shauna. It's huge.
Yeah.
It is
Someone
huge.
was asking about like a scope and sequence. We definitely have that. I just didn't show it today. I'll try to pull it up. Also, that's kind of, we try to reduce the burden there. So crazy that just this word is not coming up on my computer. I'm sorry, I'm not finding it. A lesson would look like, Sandra. So the three components, remember, it's rereading for fluency, word work, and guided reading. The proportion of the lesson, what you do with each component varies depending on how they are in that continuum. So early on with a beginner or someone who's super struggling, we do put a lot more time into word work. So say you have 20 minutes, you might just do 2 to 4 minutes of rereading for fluency. A quick check, did they do the mastery work that you wanted from yesterday's passage? Then you'd probably spend about, did I say 20 minutes? Yeah, you'd probably spend about 5 to 12 minutes in word work, probably more like 8 to 12 minutes in word work. And so you probably do with a beginner, you would do half of that with Switch It and half of it with Read It. And then you would do the rest of the lesson, 8 to 10 minutes on guided oral reading. So you want to put it into practice and have them read a real text. And if they can't do any reading, which sometimes happens because we're trying to get our beginners to read really quickly, we read it to them and then maybe ask them to read one word, one CVC word. So we do it, we call it buddy reading. So we get the absolute beginner who cannot read without a lot of support. We do the work for them, and then we quickly fade our support. And so that's a typical 20-minute for a beginner. As they get better at their word work, that decreases and rereading for fluency increases, and so does guided oral reading. Jennifer put in her lesson plans. She's got kindergarten English language learners this year. Last year she did first graders, so thank you. Lori, actually, our advanced Switch It is very similar to Kilpatrick's 1-minute drills. I think they're trying to get at the same thing. The beginning part I would disagree with because that sequence doesn't go straight to the phonemic level, and it doesn't tie it into letter sounds. And you saw with that video an example of how tying it into letter sounds facilitates the learning process so quickly. But also, like I said, the research is trending that way. Yes, Bridget, Read Simplified Academy readers are decodable. They're just PDFs. We do have a lesson plan template, and it's we call it a dynamic assessment because it's a template, but also we make diagnostic decisions as you go. Rita's making a great point. She's working with kids as a tutor. It's a lot longer, and as do I as a tutor. Yeah, I usually work with them for an hour, and so rereading for fluency might be 5 to 10 minutes at the beginning. Word work may take up a lot of time, or I might do it at the beginning, have them read a book, and then come back to word work, maybe on an app to kind of, if they're getting fatigued, then to make them have fun. Like I love the What's Changed app for teaching Switch It in a new way that makes them have fun. So I mentioned some research, and I put this in the chat. If you're curious about What's the evidence that we should go straight to phonemic awareness and tie it with letter sounds? I encourage you to get the Reading League journal that just came out. Susan Brady had a review. If you Google it, you can probably find the longer version of it. Susan Brady. She's reviewing a lot of other people's research, so you can look back at the other citations. There are actual experiments of kindergartners where they went straight to phonemic awareness, or rather not kindergartners, pre-K kids. And they tied it with letter sounds, and they were off to the races, even kids with speech difficulties.
I believe she says that you need to work on beginning and ending sounds, medial sounds, and then segmenting and blending. That's her thing. That's what she talks about.
Dawn, I was just saying, I think that the beginning of the Kilpatrick activities are a little inefficient because you do the global phonological awareness and you can actually go straight to phonemic awareness like that boy from last week and build it. If you want to see that whole series of videos, because I just showed a snippet, you can see a lot of it, maybe all of it on my website. If you go to readingsimplified.com and search for Learn Letter Sounds, the video of that one boy's progression is there. Now I know that's just a case study, just one kid, but maybe it can just kind of make it seem more real because it sounds probably crazy if that's not how you've gone about teaching things. Okay. Somebody's asking about juggling a lesson with a group of 4. It is super hard for sure. And I show a lot of one-on-one examples, partly because I'm a tutor and partly because it's hard to talk about the nuances of all this if you are doing multiple things. So I could show a small group example. Would that be wise, Donna, or are we going too long? I'm happy to stay, but it is the last one. So, either one.
It's fine with me. It is 8:10, just to remind you.
Okay. Let's see. We'll make it a short one. Okay. How's that sound?
Yeah.
What do you guys want to see? A group of, I can only show you one activity, switch it or read it or sort it with a small group of first graders is what I have handy. What would be the best choice there?
Read it. I agree.
Okay. It is tricky to juggle that, especially if they can't blend very well. Okay. Now I was all big talk, but now that my finder is broken, read it. I thought I had one. Oh, I know where to go.
Your finder's broken? Oh, geez.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't find my core files. It's so strange. It just disappeared today with my connection with Dropbox. Okay, I have another way to go about it. Open file. Desktop. Okay, here is read it with the second day I worked with these struggling readers. And we'll see who's ready to go first. You all look ready. Who wants to go first? Okay. Now don't help him. It's my job to help him, okay? Can you put it down so I can see it too? Good. What do you have there? Put the first two sounds together? Claw. And hold that ah. Claw.
Clock.
You got it. Clock. Okay, everybody say the sounds as they write it. Yeah, let's write it. K. K. You can do it too. K. O. Ah. K. Now let's look at the K. This is the 2-letter K. 2-letter K. Okay. Do you remember how do we do the erase game?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, ready? K. Start at the beginning. There you go. There you. Nicely done. Okay, I've got a hand in the air. Don't help him. Let me help him, okay? Put it down here and we can read it together. You're being quirky. Let's put those sounds together.
Spend.
Oh my goodness, that was so fast. Did you hear that? He said spend. I don't need to spend too much money, okay? Write the sounds and say it. Spend. You hear them in your brain. You've got them. Don't look at theirs. Everybody cover. You hear the sounds.
Can I erase it? No, cover.
Cover and you nailed it. Let me see. Can I see your board? Very, so close. You just need the last sound. Spend. Spend. That's great. And let's erase. Ready? Okay. Next time. So that is one chaotic way of doing it. That's just getting started. So there's a lot, you know, everybody's getting the same word. Goodness, I can't find my stop share button. Can you see me? Okay, thank you, Dawn. So we're just gonna have that there, I think, unless I don't know what happens when I do that. Okay, so after they get better at it, you could give everyone the same word on a whiteboard, or you could give everyone a different word, but early on, you got to really, you know, scaffold. That's one way of doing it. There's a lot of different ways of doing it that you don't have to go my style, but the important thing is that we're teaching blend as you read. We're getting the kids to say the sounds as they write it, and they're erasing them too. Lots of opportunities to build sound-based decoding with a phonemic emphasis and preparing the way for orthographic mapping. Michelle, we deal with multi-syllable words by doing read it, but just breaking it down in chunks, starting with them seeing it separately. Okay, we're going to give them sim and pull. And that point, we don't blend by word, we blend by chunk. So I want them to go sim, pull, put it together, simple. So we call it blend as you read by chunk or by syllable. All right, so Donna says this is circus act. Rita says tutoring is so much easier. Hats off to those in the classroom. Amen. So true. All right. Well, I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question, but I know that we don't want to go too long. I'm really grateful for all of your attention. And I said this last time, if you want to put, and hopefully I didn't miss anyone last time, but if you want to put a question that's still important to you and I didn't get addressed in the Facebook group where Donna has this going live, then I will check that this week and try to get to everyone's and tag me if I missed you.
This was great. You're awesome.
Thank you. So are you.
Thanks. No, what I find so intriguing is the accelerated pace that you can move kids along. It doesn't have to be dragged out for, you know, for years. For years. You could see where kids lose interest, and then, you know, this just keeps them going. It's awesome.
Yeah. That's the intent.
I'm looking forward to keeping this going. This is so new to me. I've never taught this way, so I'm really excited. Yeah, the secret sauce of this program. I love it. All right, everyone. Thanks again for showing up. Go out and teach. Bye, Eliza.
Teach your hearts out, right?
Teach your hearts out. I know you do every day. Bye, Ingrid. Bye-bye, everybody. Good night.